for coming tonight. It's my pleasure to have Heather here. We've talked about this for a while in grocery stores and other places that we meet each other.
We
like
bump
someday
into
you
each
need to
other.
come and speak. So Heather's a holistic nutrition therapy master. So there's an NTN, is a member of the National Association of Nutritional Professionals, and plans to become board certified in holistic nutrition. She is also a registered yoga teacher and sees the close connection her nutritional background and the mindfulness practice of yoga have with one another in developing a balance and facts of life. So as a holistic nutrition professional, Heather has advanced clinical education that enables her to make evidence-based health and well-being recommendations, coupled with health coaching skills that support and enhance client experience and compliance. Bioindividuality, the science of food, nutrition, composition, anatomy, physiology, and biochemistry are all part of the holistic approach she applies when working with her clients. So you'll see Heather regularly at local farmers markets, supporting quality, organic, and generatively produced foods to stock in her kitchen. Or you may have received some of the bounty or vegetables, fruits, and greens from the home gardens she and her husband have created. I didn't know that.
Well, now you do.
Now I do. So in her free time, Heather and her husband spend as much time as they can on the trails and surrounding areas, skiing, hiking, and mountain biking. And that's, I run into her doing some of those activities as well, so which is great. So yeah, I'm just excited to have Heather here and share her knowledge. It's kind of a newer area for you. Quite a bit of more training in this area, and it's pretty amazing that I've been hearing about. For those of you, there's some faces I don't recognize, and so a little bit about the Concussion Resource Center. We provide resources to people who've had concussions in a variety of ways. One way is to do education series. We try to do 3 or 4 a year usually. We also provide different events that are such as yoga, that's specific for people who've had concussions, so they modify as far as maybe not as many down dogs or being careful about balance or things like that that could be affected by concussions. And also the woman who does that, Terry Hetherington, does an iRest, which is a type of meditation, kind of bring down your nervous system. She does that online, so it's really nice because you can do that from home and then just not have to get up and do anything, which it's like it's 6:15, I think, at night. I don't know if you're doing it, Jared, have you done it? It's like I don't want to do anything the rest of the night, but very relaxed afterwards, but it's nice that it is online. And then she also has a mindset series that has been developed through the Love Your Brain Association, and that is one that I love. We don't have one currently, but we'll start another one in the spring, and it's every week has a different topic, such as resilience, and just thinking about how resilient we really are. Even if you've had a concussion, sometimes you feel like you aren't maybe very resilient. Another week is gratitude. I know that Jared's been through the program, and I think you enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite programs that we offer, just kind of the connections that people make with other people who've had concussions. And so that will be in the spring. So if any of you are not on our mailing list, you might want to sign up. You can put your email there and I'll put you on the list. We try just to do one newsletter a month. Sometimes we have a second one. We had a second one this week just as a reminder about tonight's talk. And just to be on top of what are the things that we're doing in the community and for people who've had concussions. So with that said, I'll turn it back over to Heather, and she can share this great knowledge that she has for us tonight.
Great, thank you. Actually, Kathy and I know each other from the Love Your Brain training. I forgot we did that years ago.
Yes.
It's been so long. All right. Well, thank you guys for having me tonight. As Kathy mentioned, my bio sounded like really, really formal. I feel good. I'm a certified nutritional therapy master, and I am currently on the docket to sit for the exam to become board certified in holistic nutrition. That's called BCHN, and it's through an accreditation service from the National Association of Nutritional Professionals. That is a professional program and professional organization that is responsible for advocating for nutrition professionals. It's nationwide, and it's also responsible for accreditation, for credentialing, and ongoing continuing education. So really important organization for the nutritional professional. And holistic nutrition is kind of a hard thing to define, right? So I'm just gonna give you bullet points of what holistic nutrition is. So we're basically melding nutritional science with optimal nourishment of the body so that we have individual approaches when it comes to nutritional health. So we're kind of assessing nutritional health using the markers from diet, stress, sleep, lifestyle, environment. So looking at things from a holistic view rather than pinpointing one piece of that puzzle. And a good way to describe the main tenet of holistic nutrition: education, empowerment, individual assessments for each person. So not that cookie cutter, one size fits all, take these fruits and vegetables and you'll be fine kind of approach. The main difference between a holistic provider and somebody who is a registered dietitian is that I am not providing medical nutrition therapy. So I'm not providing nutrition advice that is designed to prevent, heal, or cure any specific disease. Rather, I'm a practitioner looking at root cause wellness. So when we think about disease states as a symptom of something going on that's underlying, that's where I come from in my nutritional guidelines. The similarities between myself and a registered dietitian is it's all rooted in science, right? We use science to guide us when we come up with these recommendations. So today's presentation, we'll just kind of dive in. The aim for today's presentation is for me to just give you guys a little focus on the factors that are highly modifiable when it comes to healthy aging of the brain. So, using nutritional and lifestyle strategies, we can go a long way in supporting healthy brain aging, whether we have conditions or not. So these are general recommendations using nutrition and lifestyle as our guidelines. All right. So let's dive in. First, let's talk about, in a really oversimplified fashion, what the things the brain needs to function properly. So this healthy brain recipe requires energy, we require oxygen, and we require stimulation. So ATP is probably something everybody's familiar with. Our mitochondria are the engines of our cell, and the ATP is what mitochondria produces, which is that energy currency. And even though our brains only occupy about 2% of the entire weight of our bodies, they require up to a third of the total energy requirements that we need to function. So a lot of energy goes into our brains. Obviously, we need oxygen, right? Without oxygen, we have no life. And without oxygen, cells and tissues start to die. We don't want to live without oxygen. Stimulation, we obviously need to have healthy nerve impulses. We need to have healthy conduction so that we can make things happen and have nerve transmission create actions in our bodies. So let's talk about normal age-related brain changes. So these are normal things that happen as we age, regardless of whether we have injuries or damage to the brain in the first place. First thing that is on this list, our blood supply and our nerve cells decrease, which reduces the size and the volume of our brain. So our brains actually shrink as we age. Declarative memory does decline. This is going to be like our long-term memory, recollection of facts, like what's the capital of France? I can't remember the capital of France. Or what did we do on our last vacation, right? What are some details of the last vacation? Those kind of long-term memories start to kind of go, gosh, I remember I used to know this, right? Anybody have that sort of experience? Our working memory also declines. So this is the short-term ability to hold bits of information, like doing simple math in our heads, or remembering a password or somebody's name or the phone number that somebody just gave you. And then it sort of disappears. It's like, gosh, what was your name? I just met this person, right? Procedural memory is actually retained. So this is how we remember how to ride a bike. We remember how to play an instrument. We remember how to make a cup of tea. These kind of things that connect to the physical body in motion. And then spatial and abstract reasoning, I found this interesting, actually improve with age. So this is our higher order thinking, where we can think about complex concepts, thinking about things in 2 to 3 dimensions. So if we can visualize something in our brain, if you've ever done those exercises where they have something unfolded and you see what it's supposed to look like if you fold it up into a 3-dimension, that actually improves as we age. It's really important, though, to understand the difference and distinguish the difference between normal aging and what we think of as common aging. So pathological aging is not normal aging. It's not a normal aging process. And this is a little deeper than just those senior moments that we have. This is where true damage occurs. So memory loss and cognitive decline that prevents us from having meaningful engagement. Things like daily tasks, like forgetting to turn things off, especially things like stoves, the showers, feeding ourselves or our pets, giving out really confidential information to strangers that we don't realize we gave it to. These are signs of actual damage to the brain that's not a part of our normal aging process. So, insulin's role in the brain is not primarily about glucose uptake. When we think about insulin, we think about blood glucose and how insulin surges from the pancreas to pull that glucose out of our blood into tissues for energy. We don't need insulin to pull glucose into the brain. This is kind of a cool thing. We have specialized transporters that actually shuttle glucose into these cells called astrocytes. Astrocytes are the cells that cross the blood-brain barrier. And they're designed to provide nutrients to the brain and get waste products out of the brain. So with these specialized transporters we don't need insulin receptors to pull glucose into the nerve cells within our brains. Where insulin does play a role is in these higher energy demands. So if you look at this list, this is our highest density of insulin receptors, our hypothalamus, our sense of smell. The hippocampus is responsible for memory. Our cerebral cortex is the higher thought processes. Cerebellum for balance and movement. So this is where we have a lot of density of insulin receptors, and these are insulin-dependent receptors, insulin-dependent parts of the brain. So really critical functions that we need insulin to work properly to provide energy to the brain. So kind of a little repetitive, but roles of insulin signaling, metabolic pathways, both in the liver, from the liver metabolism and fat metabolism, enhancing nerve regeneration, neuroplasticity. Everybody should know that that's our brain's ability to rewire and reorganize itself to form new connections, either as repair processes from damage or from learning new things. New and meaningful things can actually retrain and rewire our neural connections. Spatial learning is when we have an understanding where things are in space. We use cues like shapes, colors, textures, things like that to learn in space where what things are and recognize things. And then neurotransmitter release, things like serotonin, acetylcholine, dopamine, GABA, all of these really important nerve transmitter properties. Synaptic signaling between nerves. We need to have that good electric current in order to conduct these messages that need to be sent throughout our bodies to make things happen. Okay, any questions so far? All right, let's talk about some of the things that drain our brains here. So I just talked about the important things about insulin and their roles in our brains. So the opposite of everything that we just talked about can happen if we have insulin resistance. So just like when we have insulin resistance all over the rest of the body, we can also have insulin resistance in our brains as well. So dysfunctional metabolic pathways, impaired energy metabolism, that ability to rewire and reframe those neural pathways gets limited. We have faulty neurotransmitter release, and we can actually even lead to nerve death in the body. Leaky blood-brain barrier. So our blood-brain barrier is very similar to the gut barrier in our GI tract, although it's not just one cell thick like the gut barrier is. But it's really important for managing access to the brain and from the brain, right? So this is where it measures what's allowed in and what gets taken out. And regulating blood flow, delivery of nutrients are all really important pieces of the blood-brain barrier. Things like chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, those free radicals that form, chronic stress itself, diet and lifestyle choices, medications, true toxins, imbalances in the GI tract, and even head trauma can lead to this leaky blood-brain barrier, so damage to the blood-brain barrier. We're going to unpack a lot of these because there is a lot of overlap in some of these promoters. So let's just kind of dive into all of them. Inflammation. If we talk about inflammation, we can't talk about it without the immune system, because anytime we have inflammation in the body, the immune system is a part of that. The immune system's big role is to heal the body, right? Inflammation is part of healing. It's a normal consequence of regulating the immune system, and it produces the inflammatory compounds like cytokines, if anybody's heard those before, for healing. These specialized immune cells called microglia are really important for regulating and developing and maintaining our cells in the brain. And if we have too much inflammation, we're going to have too much of these inflammatory compounds, and we're going to have too much stimulation of the immune system. So anything that overstimulates the immune system, like chronic infections, imbalances in the GI tract, overweight, we store toxins in our fat cells. Insulin resistance, we've already talked quite a bit about so far. Toxins and heavy metals, autoimmune conditions. All of these stimulate an immune response and are very inflammatory. Oxidative stress. So we know what free radicals are. These are really one of the leading contributors to damage to our mitochondria. Remember, those engines of our cells that provide energy. So this is very damaging to cells. Free radicals are very unstable molecules. Incidentally, free radical formation is a normal byproduct of metabolism in our bodies. So it's really important for us to understand that when it comes to detoxifying. We're not just doing a cleanse because we feel like we need to eat better after the holidays. It's really a daily thing that happens with everything that comes into our bodies. Our bodies are always detoxifying because we create free radicals as a byproduct of metabolism normally in our bodies. So if we don't have enough antioxidants in our bodies, or we're not supporting antioxidant production in our bodies, if we're smoking, if we have lots of heavy metal and toxins in our bodies, again, that blood sugar dysregulation is high on the list. Kind of go hand in hand, oxidative stress and inflammation. Heavy metals are known neurotoxins, right? The heavy hitters are arsenic, mercury, lead, aluminum. We actually have those astrocytes that I mentioned earlier, those specialized cells that cross the blood-brain barrier. They can actually accumulate heavy metals, and then they just go right into the blood-brain barrier, right? This is also an important piece to know, that heavy metals actually bind with minerals for binding site, or excuse me, compete for minerals for binding sites. So this can lead to mineral deficiencies in our bodies. On the other side of it, if we're not getting enough minerals in our diet, that can lead to increased absorption of heavy metals. So just a few examples I've jotted down: calcium, iron, and selenium deficiencies can all increase lead absorption. If we have the right amount of zinc in our bodies, that can actually clear heavy metals. Selenium protects against mercury toxicities. Iron can mitigate arsenic absorption. One nutrient of note, cilantro, is a huge heavy hitter when it comes to heavy metals. What happens is it chelates with irons and it binds with different heavy metals. Is anybody familiar with chelation? Yeah, chelation is when something binds to usually some sort of ion of some sort, another mineral of some sort, and then it is able to bind it and pull it out. And so cilantro is really well known for those properties too. If anybody loves cilantro, go out and have some guacamole after this. Some people think it tastes like soap. There's saponins in it, there's fiber, and there's antioxidant properties, and those three things combined are what create that chelation activation of binding with heavy metals and getting them out. Cortisol, we all know what cortisol and stress feels like, right? When we have a lot of stress, we have a lot of glucose circulating in our bodies because we have this false alarm saying danger, danger. We need as much energy as we can to fight that bear or run away from it. And then we have this surge of insulin that pulls that glucose out of the bloodstream into storage or into energy. And then we have this vicious cycle that takes place, right? So if we have this chronic upregulation of stress, we're gonna have this chronic upregulation of high blood glucose, high insulin, which can eventually lead to insulin resistance, right? Metabolic dysfunction. And this leads to atrophy of parts of the brain, like our memory center in the hippocampus. It's also going to activate those little immune cells, those microglial cells that release those inflammatory cytokines. Interesting thing about cortisol is when it works properly, it's great. It's designed for short-term kind of responses. When it works properly, it's very anti-inflammatory, right? Because it sort of shunts the immune system. We don't need inflammation when we're pulling that car off of somebody who's pinned underneath it or running from that bear, right? But once that's over, the negative feedback needs to shut everything down so everything can work properly again. And eventually that leads, when we have chronic upregulation of cortisol, that does lead to this chronic dysfunction of the immune system. And eventually it's just going to keep spitting out these inflammatory cytokines, which leads to a very pro-inflammatory environment. Okay. Sleep deprivation. So glymph cells are cells of the immune system in our brains. And these are important for flushing. So they need to take out the trash when we're sleeping, right? If we're not getting deep sleep cycles, we're not taking out that trash. So these glial cells only drain when we're sleeping. And so if we're not sleeping, we're not getting all of those wastes out of our bodies that need to be removed so that we can repair and get ready for the next day of insults that our brains and our bodies have to deal with, right? And sleep also enhances memory consolidation. So anybody who knows what it feels like to be sleep deprived, that fog, right? I just can't think straight. I just need to sleep, right? We all feel it. Okay, this is a big one, guys. Loss of diversity in our gut bugs, loss of functionality in our GI tract is called dysbiosis. So you may or may not have heard of that. We have bacteria, we have fungus, we have parasites in our GI tract, and that makes up our microbiome. So our microbiome is really important for gut health. There's a lot of different ways. I tried to pack it all into one slide here, but we have this vagal nerve, that's our parasympathetic responses. That is the superhighway between our guts and our brains. That's our gut-brain axis. There's this bidirectional communication that we have. Over 80% of the communication comes from the gut to the brain, not vice versa. So the gut is going to be signaling to the brain what needs to happen. When the gut is not balanced, it's sending imbalanced signals to the brain as well. We have over 100 million neurons just in the lining of our gut, okay? Neurotransmitter production is made in the gut. When we feed our gut bugs with those fermentable fibers that our human bodies cannot digest, those bacteria and those bugs produce short-chain fatty acids. These are important for neurotransmitter production, like acetylcholine, like serotonin. More than 90% of the serotonin we produce is in our GI tract, not our brains. GABA, glycine, these are all important neurotransmitters. Our immunity is trained in our gut. This is where our immune system learns to distinguish between friend or foe, so it can take out the ones that don't belong there and leave the good ones alone. If that's disrupted, what does our immune system do? I don't know who's bad or good, right? Intestinal barrier functionality relies on a healthy gut. So if we have vulnerability in our barrier, we have this mucus layer, and then we have those tight junctions, if you've ever heard of that, where we have cells that are tightly packed together, but they also have to allow nutrients to get out of our intestinal wall into our bloodstream to provide energy, right? And so if we have permeability, then all of a sudden these cells are slipping between this, or these undigested products of digestion are actually slipping between the cells rather than through the cells. It's like somebody sneaking in the back door when the bouncer is trying to make sure everybody who goes in is right and kicking out the ones that don't belong. We slipped in behind them, right? So that's what happens. And what happens when these undigested, unvetted proteins, and if you've heard of LPS endotoxins, lipopolysaccharides, these are very neurotoxic chemicals that get into the bloodstream, and they can cross the blood-brain barrier. They can get right into our brains. They jump on that astrocyte bandwagon, and they can get right into our brains, okay? All right, so let's talk about the good news. What can we do to help these brains function and age properly, right? So BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factors. These are growth factors, really important for development, transmission of neurons, and that neuroplasticity once again. Really important for our circadian rhythms, those cues of light and dark that give us sleep and wakeful times. Brain insulin sensitivity. Exercise is probably the most recognized way that we can upregulate BDNF. Does this mean everybody has to go out and sign up for a tribe class or a Les Mills hardcore exercise after this? No, we are human beings and we are designed to move all the time, right? So it's actually, I think a lot of studies are showing that you're better off. There's more benefits to just walking 15 minutes after every meal 3 times a day than going to the gym first thing in the morning and doing a hardcore 2-hour workout and then sitting at your desk the rest of the day. So the more we can keep regular amounts of exercise, even as I stand here, I could do some air squats, right? This is why we have stand-up desks now. This is why there's walking treadmill desks now and stuff like that. What is it? Used to be sitting is the new smoking now or something like that. So yeah, there's a lot of benefits to regular moderate exercise. We don't have to go crazy and just like wreck our bodies to say, I gotta move in order to keep my brain healthy, right? Social stimulation, mental stimulation, all really important. Learning new things is really important, right? We stop learning new things, our brains are like, well, I don't have to really do much new anymore, do I, right? Intermittent fasting and low carb diets, we'll talk about that in just a couple slides. Antioxidants, you'll see this repeatedly throughout the rest of this presentation. Okay, intermittent fasting. TRF stands for time restricted feeding. Does this mean you guys have to go days without eating? No, that's not what intermittent fasting is. We actually kind of naturally intermittent fast every night when we go to sleep, right? Unless you guys are waking up every 4 hours to go have a meal, we all sleep from whatever time you finish your dinner to the time you wake up to eat your breakfast, right? But if we can tighten that eating window to even 8 or 12 hours during the day, that's actually going to start training the body to use fats for energy. And that can increase levels of antioxidant defenses. That increases BDNF, like I just mentioned. That can decrease inflammation. It will improve digestion, improve insulin sensitivity. It actually activates autophagy, if anybody's heard that term before. This is where we basically have kind of cellular cleanup that takes place from old and used components that don't need to be, kind of removes and recycles things that don't need to be used anymore, right? Keto diet. So this is a higher fat. I just mentioned we can kind of train the body to use fats for energy more. Higher fat, higher protein, lower carbohydrate diet. Now, this is not necessarily a cookie cutter diet for every single person, but there are studies that show how if we're training our bodies to use fatty acids, not only are we improving metabolic flexibility in our bodies, but neurons can actually use ketones for energy. Remember, neurons do not rely on insulin to pull glucose into the brain. So we can, and ketones very easily cross the blood-brain barrier. So fats, by the way, have double the amount of energy per kcals of grams than protein and carbohydrates combined. So a little bit of fat goes a long way, right? So we don't have to just eat, maybe keto diet is not everybody's cup of tea, but if we start focusing our attention a little bit more on healthy fats, this can take us a long way in brain health. It's going to improve mitochondrial function, nerve transmission, it decreases inflammation, and again, like I mentioned before, that's going to increase BDNF. The Mediterranean diet is highly known as a great brain diet because it's very anti-inflammatory, loaded with antioxidants, healthy fibers, and healthy fats. Oleocanthal is a polyphenol antioxidant compound in olive oil. Olive oil also has a lot of omega-3 anti-inflammatory compounds. This is an interesting thing. Has anybody heard that the better quality the olive oil, the more people cough? Has anybody ever been to Italy and had really good olive oil? I have yet to taste an olive oil that makes me cough. But what's going on is that the oleocanthal that polyphenol antioxidant in olive oil. The better quality the olive oil, the higher that antioxidant it has. And it actually activates a receptor in the back of our throat that makes us cough. So wouldn't that be a fun experiment? Let's all go to Olive Valley and check it out. See what makes you cough. And if it makes you cough, it means it's a really high quality olive oil. All right. Okay, so let's get a little bit more specific now with nutrients rather than overall diets. All the B vitamins, I listed every single one of them because every one of them is important for energy metabolism. So remember I mentioned that free radicals are a normal byproduct of metabolism. And what we do in our liver detoxification pathways is that we have free radical formation that takes place. It's initially very inflammatory, but the reason the body does that is because it makes it easier to convert it into a water-soluble compound so that it can then be safely conjugated and taken out of our bodies. Bodies are pretty amazing. It's like, this is by design, right? Free radical formation is a normal byproduct of metabolism. So the body produces these metabolic byproducts, and we need all these little cofactors. Now, B vitamins aren't the only things. We have zinc, we have magnesium, we have vitamin C, all sorts of other vitamins and minerals that are also part of this detoxification process, but the B vitamins are the heaviest hitters. B6, B12 especially, B9, that's folate. So all these are part of this whole cycle of detoxifications. And I put just kind of a general list of everything sort of all piled into one as far as whole food sources go. Creatine, it's not just for building muscle. So really important for brain energy metabolism. So if you're taking creatine to build your muscles, good job. You're also working on the brain too. It is the storage form of energy in our brain and our muscles. And half of it comes from our own body's production. So we can endogenously produce creatine from different amino acids that it synthesizes through the liver and the kidneys. Most reliably, creatine comes from animal foods. So anybody who's a vegetarian or a vegan may need supplementation if you plan on taking creatine. But that's kind of a heavy hitter as far as any kind of specific nutrients go. Yes, Jared?
So I've heard with creatine, if you were just doing it for muscle growth, 5 grams. If you're doing it for mental cognition, 20 to 30 grams. One, have you heard that as well? And two, if so, what are your recommendations for how to take that much creatine in a day without having GI tract?
You mean taking it in the whole food form rather than supplement form?
No, white powder supplement.
Okay. Yeah, so a lot of the creatines out there on the market come as 5 grams, 5 milligrams, 5 grams. I am not a medical professional, so I don't know what other people in the room might think, but I would imagine that you would want to take a higher amount for specifically brain health, but I don't actually have the answer to that. I take creatine as a supplement powder that I just put in my smoothies every day or my water. A lot of creatine that you buy that's in a powder form does have no taste. So it's not like you're drinking something that tastes horrible. But I also take a lot of these animal sources on a pretty regular basis, and you can get creatine from there. We also create our own creatine in our bodies from different amino acids. So just generally speaking, protein intake, and we'll talk about that in upcoming slides, protein in general is actually a great way to get some of these amino acids that make up things like creatine or glutathione, which is our master antioxidant we'll talk about. So kind of trying, if you're really wanting to optimize it and you want to actually know how many grams you actually have in the blood, that would be something that I wouldn't be able to answer. But 5 grams is a good starting point. I know that just a personal thing, my sister takes creatine and she was starting to have some weird skin things, and whether or not it had anything to do with the creatine or not, she kind of cut back on it and they started to subside. I don't personally believe that that was from the creatine. She has other things going on, but you know, sometimes I don't think, honestly, there's a way that you could overdose yourself on creatine. It is an amino acid, and we create it all in our bodies as well. I don't know whether you can or not when it comes into supplement form. I'm sorry, that's a really long answer with no real answer for you. But yeah, I don't think that there's anything wrong with a range between 5 grams, which is what most creatine supplements I've seen out there come in, going up to 10 to 20 grams. I think that you can kind of play with that. And I don't know, honestly, if medical providers have a way to test for that, or if they can test amino acids rather than just creatine. I don't know. That's a
For what it's worth,
good
other
thing.
medical providers have heard online say, you know, you can do it 4 times a day with water or eat protein with it.
Yeah.
But it is not advised to do it all in one shot in the morning. So
Yeah. I don't think I would want to have that much creatine all at once anyway. But yeah, it's probably a fairly safe one as far as if you go the supplement route to get a lot of it without having issues with overdosing on anything. In other words, I don't think there's a way that you can get too much creatine in your body, like getting too much iron or something like that, right? Okay, choline supports memory, learning, attention, and focus. So really important for lots of different things. Choline is kind of like the superpower here as far as specific nutritional supports go. Lipid metabolism, neurotransmission. It's a precursor to neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which you may notice that there's some similarities in the name there. Really part of the cell membrane and also helps with BDNF production. So again, you can get choline in animal and plant sources, which is why this one is a great one to get as many whole food sources as you can. Protein, we just kind of talked about that a little bit. Amino acids are really vital to production of neurotransmitters, really vital to repair, growth, and maintenance in the body. Brain metabolism really relies on protein, and then they are loaded with antioxidant properties. So a few moments ago, I mentioned the master antioxidant. It's called glutathione, if anybody's heard of that one. That one's made of tripeptide. It's cysteine, glutamine, and glycine are the 3 amino acids that make up glutathione. So when we think about antioxidants, we oftentimes think fruits and vegetables, colorful foods, right? But we can get a lot of protein or a lot of antioxidants from animal sources as well. So a lot of people don't really think of that because we want to eat the rainbow, right? Speaking of eating the rainbow, antioxidants are really important for inflammation and oxidative stress mitigation. So this is going to help us keep those free radicals under control. The gold standard to strive for is up to 30 different, not the same, 30 different colored fruits and vegetables, including herbs and spices, in 1 week's worth of time. It is possible to do it. You just got to be creative. And if you think about it, we eat 3 square meals a day. That's 21 meals a week. If you have one different thing for every meal, you're almost there, right? And you can also include those herbs and spices as well. We don't have to limit it to just, big piles of ounces and ounces of food. Omega-3 fatty acids. So fat is a big buzzword these days, right? People are a little afraid of eating too many fats. Fats are the cholesterol starter kit, right? Cholesterol is necessary for myelin sheath health. Cholesterol makes up cell membranes. Our cells are bathed in DHA. So these essential fatty acids, these are not optional. These are essential from our diet. Omega-3, EPA, and DHA. DHA is the big one when it comes to brain health because it maintains the blood-brain barrier. It's highly neuroprotective, highly anti-inflammatory. Most reliably sourced omega-3s are going to be from animals once again, but you can get nuts and seeds. There are precursors called ALA that you can get from nuts and seeds. The direct sources of omega-3s are going to be more animal-based products or the oils, olives, olive oil, things like that. This one people may not think much about. Water. So our cerebral spinal fluid is mostly made of water, right? Even just 2% dehydration can impair performance. It can increase inflammation in our bodies. Anybody ever gotten dehydrated where it's hard to kind of keep things straight? Anybody ever heard the thing where somebody's starving and says, you're not hungry, just drink water. You're not hungry, just drink. You're thirsty. It allows nutrients to be better absorbed, right? Water is also important for lymph. Lymph is mostly made of water, and our lymph is part of the immune system that drains fluids and provides nutrients throughout our bodies. It keeps the flow of things moving through our bodies. The gold standard is half our weight in ounces, minimum every day. Really important though, don't go all day drinking no water and then chug a whole gallon of water at the end of the day. It taxes the kidneys and it can actually flush out important minerals and nutrients out of our bodies. So we do not store water in our bodies. Water is something that is used every second it's provided into our bodies, okay? So we have to sip all day long. Sip your water, sip your water, sip your water, even if you're not thirsty. Our bodies need water, okay? Did I mention that our bodies need water? All right. And then gut health. I already mentioned this. This is a very oversimplified version of things that are important for gut health. We kind of talked about everything here. This is a really interesting thing about our bodies. We are mostly made of microbes. Our microbes outnumber our human cells 1.3 to 1. That's the new ratio that studies have found. But what's even more astounding, when they did the Human Genome Project, we found that our microbial genes outnumber human genes by about 150 to 1. So we're mostly made of bugs, right? And so we really need to think about our gut health when it comes to brain health. And this is why we might hear the term leaky gut. And we talked about leaky blood-brain barrier and that connection between the gut and the brain, right? Our lifestyle can really make a difference in our microbiome health. Stress can play a huge role in our permeability. Remember that gut barrier that allows these guys to sneak through without being vetted by the immune system. Cortisol really needs a healthy gut microbiome to bind receptors to turn off that negative feedback system and clear cortisol out of our bodies. So sometimes when people are like, I don't really feel stressed, we're not emotionally stressed, but GI imbalances are a huge source of stress to the body, okay? Exposure. We are a highly sanitary culture nowadays, especially after 2020, right? This antimicrobial world kind of goes against our design and our ecosystem. If we're mostly made of bugs, then we need to get out there and contact nature. We need to be digging around in the dirt, playing with plants. Owning pets, letting pets be messy, right? Getting out in the fresh air. We are not used to being exposed to this kind of stuff, right? So the more hygienic we are with our lifestyles, the less diversity we're going to see in our GI tract. And that imbalance is going to lead to a lot of problems that directly connect to how we communicate to our brains. Okay, we're getting there, guys. Phosphatidylcholine, that's a big word, so it says PC. This is our most abundant phospholipid in our body. It's a part of every cell membrane. Phospholipid is just basically the structure of something that has a hydrophilic and a hydrophobic end, so a water-loving end and a water-hating end, and that solves the mystery of oil and water not being able to mix. Cell membranes have fat around the membrane. Our blood is made of water. So water and oil don't mix, right? So this is how we solve that problem of cells and blood being able to be next to each other. And so it synthesizes choline. And when we're low, our cell membranes actually break down to release choline. So it's important to think about supporting that whole mechanism in our bodies. Phosphatidylserine is a precursor to phosphatidylcholine, and it's in highest concentration in our brain and nerves. Another phospholipid that lives in our cell membranes. Herbs. So we already kind of talked about the oleocanthal and olive oil. This is a really short list, guys. Lemon, balm, sage. These are really high in antioxidant flavonoids. Ginkgo biloba might be something familiar to people. We take it to be sharper and clearer and more focused. It improves blood flow to the brain. It has super antioxidant properties. And then bacoba is important. This is an Ayurvedic herb, if anybody's familiar with that one. Important for brain energy metabolism, and it also helps with our blood pressure regulation. So that is the end of my basic overall look at how we can support brain aging. Does anybody have questions?